For decades, Intel has held the crown in the world of microprocessor manufacturing, but recently AMD, otherwise known as Advanced Micro Devices, has challenged them. AMD didn't just appear out of nowhere, and in fact, they have been in the game for a long time and have made major contributions to the evolution of CPUs. They originally entered the market in 1975, and believe it or not, AMD and Intel actually worked together. In 1975, AMD came out with their AM9080 chip, which they had reverse engineered from Intel's 8080. Then in 1981, AMD and Intel entered a 10-year technology exchange agreement, which culminated to AMD becoming a second source manufacturer for Intel's new processors. The deal led to Intel giving AMD the license for the x86 architecture, which they still use to design their modern processors. When AMD released its AM386 chip in 1991, which they designed themselves, they sparked a rivalry with Intel, and the two have been competing against each other ever since. While Intel struck with their Pentium series, AMD responded with their K-series chips. The two fought back and forth by increasing the speeds of their CPUs, but it was AMD who manufactured the first ever 1 GHz or 1000 MHz processor, which they called the Athlon. Now this chip nowadays isn't much, but it was a big deal back in the year 2000. 3 years later, AMD was able to produce 64-bit CPUs before Intel could. Intel was so caught off balance, they had to ask AMD to license them the 64-bit instruction set for their own chips. And this is why modern 64-bit CPUs are still referred to as AMD 64, even by Intel. Another huge innovation by AMD was their Athlon 64 X2 3800 Plus, which was the first ever dual-core processor, which was released on April 21, 2005. It wasn't until a year later that Intel released their first dual-core CPU. These were AMD's glory days, as after these innovations, the company made questionable business decisions and ended up losing $1 billion just in the year of 2012. But AMD is back in 2019 with their new Ryzen 3000 series chips. These chips offer similar performance as their Intel counterparts, but at a much lower price. Take the Ryzen 5 3600 for example, and compare it to Intel's i7 8700K. Both CPUs have 6 cores, 12 threads, and offer a similar performance when gaming. But you can find the 3600 on Amazon priced at around $275 compared to the 8700K, which can be found for about $480. There's no question that the 3600 is better for price to performance, and it raises the question, why would you go with Intel when you could go with AMD for a cheaper price but similar performance? Now so far, we have only talked about AMD and compared them to Intel, but AMD has also been treading the waters of discrete GPUs. Similarly to how Intel was seen as the king of CPUs, Nvidia has been known as the top manufacturer for graphics cards. But like microprocessors, AMD have some footing here as well. I will be comparing two mid-price range GPUs for gaming at 1440p, one from each side. From AMD, we have the Radeon RX 5700 XT, and from Nvidia, we have the new RTX 2070 Super. Both of these cards were released in July of this year, so it'll be a fair comparison. And in fact, their releases were only 2 days apart. After tests in 37 different games, Nvidia came out on top, but their card was only 6% better overall. So now you may be wondering why it is that I have brought these two to compare if Nvidia's card was better. Well, let's look at their pricings. You can find the RX 5700 XT for around $530, and where's Nvidia's card, you may ask? Well, it can be found sitting pretty at $730. Now the AMD GPU may not support things like ray tracing, but modern games haven't even experimented much with this feature, and it lowers your frame rate quite substantially. Now is spending an extra $200 really worth it for a card that's only 6% faster overall at 1440p, and that supports a new technology that hasn't been experimented with much? Well, in the end I guess it's up for you to decide. Now I can't stress enough what AMD has done for the market. They've offered their own products with similar performances to others, but have marketed them at a much lower price, which causes other companies to lower their own prices. And who benefits from this? Well, you and I do, of course, the consumers. Having competition in the market increases accessibility to computer parts greatly because of reduced prices for newer components. Companies have to market their parts around their competitors, so while they are producing better technology for a lower price, we're over here laughing. When Nvidia and Intel were the top dogs of their respective fields, they could charge heavily inflated prices, but no one cared, because they were seen as the only option. But now that AMD has resurfaced, the market has swung wildly. Now at this point, you may be thinking that I have some connection to AMD or something. Well, if you were actually thinking this, then you would be right, because I actually have the before mentioned Ryzen 5 3600 powering the computer I used to make this video. Now I haven't pushed it too hard quite yet, but I have been pulling 150 FPS or more from recent titles at 1440p. AMD has become very successful once again because of their aggressive price points, and we can learn from them how to grab the attention of their consumer base, and that would be to offer the best performance for the least amount of money. What AMD has done to the market is absolutely incredible, and I can't wait to see how much performance you will be able to get on a budget in 2020. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me praise AMD, and if you're still Intel's side, well I hate to tell you, but your ship is sinking, if it hasn't hit the bottom of Coffee Lake already.